Hello, and welcome to Videos to Fall Asleep To. This video is on the history of UK Prime Ministers and their most notable actions while in office. Up the time of making this video. Please share the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Please leave a comment of what you'd like to see next. Good evening, everyone. Or perhaps, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Tonight, I want to take you on a journey through the corridors of power, the grand halls of Westminster, and the very heart of British governance. We're going to explore the fascinating, often tumultuous, and always impactful history of the United Kingdom's prime ministers. If you were to look for the job description of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in our nation's founding documents, you would run into an immediate problem. We don't have a single written constitution. And for a very long time, the job of Prime Minister didn't officially exist at all. Unlike the President of the United States, whose powers are meticulously outlined in Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, the British Prime Minister is a product of evolution, accident, necessity, and sheer political willpower. The title was originally used as an insult, a term of abuse hurled at politicians who were seen as monopolizing the king's favor. Today, I want to take you on a journey through 300 years of British history, viewed through the lens of the men, and eventually women, who have held this extraordinary office. We will look at the visionaries, the reformers, the war leaders, and the survivors who have walked through that famous black door at number 10 Downing Street. Our story begins in the early 18th century. The year is 1721. The country is reeling from a catastrophic financial crash known as the South Sea Bubble. King George I, a German prince who spoke very little English and cared more for Hanover than Halifax, needed someone to manage Parliament and fix the economy. Enter Sir Robert Walpole. Walpole was a master of patronage, managing the House of Commons with a mix of bribery, charm, and ruthless efficiency. He held the offices of First Lord of the Treasury and Chancellor of the Exchequer. Though he vehemently denied being a prime minister, he held the reins of power for an astonishing 21 years, still the longest tenure in British history. King George II even gifted him a house, 10 Downing Street. Walpole only accepted it on the condition that it belonged to the office, not him personally, establishing a tradition that survives to this day. As the 18th century progressed, the power of the monarch waned, and the power of Parliament and its leader grew. This era gave us William Pitt the Elder, who oversaw the expansion of the British Empire during the 7 Years' War, and his son, William Pitt the Younger. Pitt the Younger is a statistical marvel. He became prime minister in 1783 at the absurdly young age of 24. Imagine handing the nuclear codes to a modern 24-year-old. Yet, Pitt the Younger guided Britain through the terrifying upheaval of the French Revolution and the early Napoleonic Wars, defining the role of the prime minister as the true executive power of the state. As we move into the 19th century, Britain is transforming. The Industrial Revolution is turning green pastures into smog-choked cities. The empire is expanding across the globe, and the prime ministership becomes a battleground of titans. Early in the century, we see Earl Grey, whose government passed the Great Reform Act of 1832, taking the first agonizing steps toward modern democracy by expanding the right to vote. We see Sir Robert Peel, who founded the modern police force, giving us the terms bobbies and peelers, and who dramatically split his own party to repeal the Corn Laws, putting the welfare of starving citizens above the profits of wealthy landowners. But the Victorian era is truly defined by the most spectacular political rivalry in British history: William Gladstone and Benjamin Disraeli. They loathed each other. Gladstone was the stern, intensely moral, deeply religious leader of the Liberal Party. He would chop down trees for exercise and wander the streets of London trying to rescue fallen women. Disraeli, the Conservative leader, was a novelist, a dandy, a master flatterer, and the only prime minister of Jewish birth. When Queen Victoria was asked about the difference between the two men, she reportedly said, "When I leave the dining room after sitting next to Mr. Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest man in England. But after sitting next to Mr. Disraeli, I thought I was the cleverest woman in England." Together, through their fierce competition, they shaped the modern political party system. They alternated in power, expanding the right to vote, reforming the military, and managing a globe-spanning empire. They made politics a public spectacle, proving that a prime minister must not only manage parliament, but also capture the imagination of the public. As the 20th century dawned, the challenges facing Downing Street became existential. The Liberal government of H.H. Asquith and his dynamic chancellor, David Lloyd George, laid the foundations of the modern welfare state, introducing the first old-age pensions and national insurance. But their domestic triumphs were overshadowed by the horrors of the First World War. It was Lloyd George, the Welsh wizard, who took over in 1916, injecting a ruthless energy into the war effort that helped secure victory. However, when we think of wartime prime ministers, one figure casts a shadow over all others: Winston Churchill. In May 1940, Britain was on the brink of defeat. The British Army was trapped at Dunkirk. France was falling. Churchill stepped into number 10 and, in the words of the broadcaster Edward R. Murrow, mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. Through sheer force of personality, rhetorical brilliance, and unyielding defiance, Churchill held the nation together during its darkest hour. Yet, the British public is notoriously unsentimental. In 1945, before the war with Japan was even over, the voters unceremoniously threw Churchill out of office. They turned instead to Clement Attlee, a quiet, unassuming man who Churchill once mockingly described as a sheep in sheep's clothing. But Attlee was no sheep. His Labour government fundamentally transformed Britain. They created the National Health Service, NHS, built the modern welfare state, and began the complex, painful process of decolonization, granting independence to India. If Churchill saved Britain, it was Attlee who built the Britain that emerged from the ashes of war. The latter half of the 20th century saw prime ministers grappling with Britain's new place in the world. No longer an imperial superpower, but a medium-sized European nation with a struggling economy. We saw Harold Macmillan tell the country they had never had it so good before being brought down by scandal. We saw Harold Wilson navigate the swinging 60s and modernize British society. And then, in 1979, the mold was broken entirely. Margaret Thatcher became Britain's first female prime minister. Love her or loathe her, and there is rarely an in-between. Thatcher was a conviction politician. She didn't seek consensus. She sought to break it. She privatized state-owned industries, crushed the power of the trade unions, fought a war over the Falkland Islands, and fundamentally rewired the British economy. She defined an entire decade, proving the immense power the office holds when occupied by someone with an unshakable ideology. The 1990s and 2000s brought Tony Blair, who modernized the Labour Party, oversaw a booming economy, and introduced Scottish and Welsh devolution, but whose legacy remains deeply entangled with the controversial invasion of Iraq. And as we look at the 21st century, from David Cameron and the Brexit referendum, through the turbulent tenures of Theresa May and Boris Johnson navigating our exit from the EU and a global pandemic, to the unprecedented rapid-fire turnovers that gave us Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and the shifting landscapes of the mid-2020s, we see an office under immense pressure. The 24-hour news cycle, social media, and a polarized electorate have made the job of Prime Minister more volatile and perhaps more precarious than ever before. To be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is to inherit the legacy of Walpole's cunning, Pitt's precocity, Gladstone's morality, Churchill's courage, and Thatcher's conviction. It is a lonely job. As Lord Rosebery, a prime minister in the late 19th century, once sighed, "There are two supreme pleasures in life, One is ideal, the other real. The ideal is when a man receives the seals of office from his sovereign. The real pleasure comes when he hands them back. Yet, despite the stress, the scandals, and the inevitable fall from grace that almost every prime minister eventually faces, the office endures. It has survived world wars, economic collapse, imperial decline, and profound social